And then she laughed. They all did. And I smiled, because I already knew what I was going to do. I waited until the house was still again. Then I walked into the guest room, the one they'd shoved me into when I moved in with them last year. The closet was packed with holiday decorations and junk, but behind a stack of boxes, I kept a fireproof safe. I opened it. Inside was a navy blue passport, with my name in crisp black letters. I hadn't used it in over 20 years. Not since Warren died, but I renewed it every 10 years. Just in case. I pulled out the envelope next. It was thick, with a bank logo across the top. I'd been saving ever since I moved in. Every check from my pension, every dime from the Social Security that Andrew didn't know I still received separately. I never spent more than I had to. I clipped coupons. I let them believe I was comfortable but simple. The truth? I had over $80,000 tucked away. Not fortune money, but more than enough for one good, beautiful, revenge-filled trip. I picked up my phone and called a woman I hadn't spoken to in years. "Beverly?" I said when she picked up. "It's Ruth. You still running that little travel agency out of your garage?" "Ruth Shepherd. Is that really you? I need a ticket. One way, something bold." She chuckled. "Where do you want to go?" "I don't know yet," I said, "but I want sun, color, music, and enough history to make my bones feel alive again." Beverly gasped. "Well, girl, you're about to live." I booked the first leg to Lisbon, Portugal. I'd seen it once in a magazine at the hair salon. Cobblestone streets, colorful tiles, blue skies, and warm air that felt like silk. It was perfect. I packed lightly, one bag, rolling, with a hidden pouch in the lining for my document. I filled it with sundresses, wide-brimmed hats, orthopedic sandals, and one pink silk scarf I'd been saving since Warren passed. I called a neighbor boy to drive me to the airport, told him I was visiting an old friend. I left a note on the kitchen table for Andrew and Lisa. "Dear Andrew, you're right. I am too old for drama, too old to be left behind, too old to wait for someone to remember I still have dreams. So I'm taking myself on the trip you never thought I was good enough for. The house will be fine. The plants are watered. Don't call. I'll send postcard." They booked flights, packed their suitcases, and laughed as they pulled away in the driveway. My granddaughter blew a kiss out the window and said, "You're too old to travel with us, Grandma. Just stay and watch the house." I waved, silent. They thought they were leaving me behind. But the moment they turned that corner, I started planning the trip of a lifetime without them. You'd be surprised how quiet a house gets after the front door closes and the car pulls away. No more shuffling footsteps. No more rushed conversation, just the ticking of a clock and the faint creak of pipes behind the walls. I stood at the window and watched their car disappear, my hand still raised in a half-hearted wave. I waited until I couldn't see their taillights anymore. Then I walked into the kitchen, set the kettle on the stove, and sat down with a heavy breath. They were gone, off to Europe, 10 days, 8 cities, one shiny itinerary that didn't include me. My name's Ruth Shepherd. I'm 75 years old. I have silver gray hair that I keep in a tidy bob, eyes that still see sharper than most, and a memory like a steel trap, especially when it comes to how people make me feel. My son Andrew and his wife Lisa had been planning this vacation for months. They called it their legacy tour, something about reconnecting with family roots and seeing the world before their daughter Casey started college. I was thrilled for them at first. Then I saw the group text. It was one of those accidental reveals. Lisa sent the wrong screenshot to the family thread. It was a conversation between her and Andrew. "Lisa, should we ask your mom if she wants to come?" "Andrew, she'd just slow us down. Plus, the stairs in Italy would kill her knees." "Lisa, right." and she can't handle long flights. Just ask her to watch the house. She'll say yes, she always does. Andrew. Good point. Tell her we're worried about security. Make her feel needed. I stared at that message for a long time. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. Not because of what they said, but because of how easily they said it. Like I wasn't a person. Just a placeholder. A set of hands to water plants and collect mail. They didn't even consider that I might want to go. I didn't confront them. Not yet. When Lisa came to me the next morning with her sweet smile and said, "Ruth, we'd feel so much better if you stayed here and watched the place, just in case." I nodded. "Of course," I said, like I always do. They hugged me. Lisa even got teary-eyed. Casey said, "You're the best, Grandma," before rushing out the door with her overstuffed suitcase and passport lanyard. I stood on the porch as they loaded up the car. I asked them where their first stop was. "Paris," Andrew said. "Then Rome. Then a cruise through the Greek island." They looked so proud, so certain that I would be content in their shadow. Casey grinned, snapping photos for her social media. She didn't even ask me to be in one. When she got in the car, she called out, "You're too old to travel with us, Grandma. Just stay and watch the house." "Maybe, Mom." The airport smelled like coffee and perfume and possibility. When the gate attendant scanned my ticket and smiled, I felt something crack open in my chest, like a long-forgotten window finally pushed open. I took a window seat, and as the plane lifted off the ground, I whispered, "Goodbye, house. And hello, world." I used to think airports were only exciting for young people, college kids with backpacks and honeymooners, who couldn't keep their hands off each other. But the second I stepped off that plane and into the Lisbon terminal, something inside me clicked. Not the click of age or caution, but the click of freedom, like a door I didn't even know was locked, had just swung wide open. The air smelled different here, bright and a little salty, like it came straight from the ocean. The signs were in Portuguese, but the smile on the woman at customs didn't need translation. She stamped my passport like I was exactly where I was meant to be. I found my luggage, wheeled it behind me with more pep than I'd felt in years, and met the driver Beverly had arranged for me. A tall, gray-haired man in a tan vest held a small cardboard sign that read Ruth Shepherd. He gave a slight bow when I approached. "Welcome to Lisboa, Senora," he said in a thick accent. I smiled. "Thank you, it's been a long time since anyone welcomed me anywhere." He helped me into a sleek little cab and drove me straight through winding streets that looked like something out of a movie. The buildings were painted yellow, pink, and sky blue, with wrought iron balconies dripping in flowers. Laundry lines crisscrossed overhead, and music floated from windows like everyone here had their own soundtrack. I couldn't stop staring. Everything felt alive, not just the city. My hotel wasn't a skyscraper or a glass box. It was a 4-story converted townhouse with ivy on the walls and hand-painted tiles on every corner. A young woman at the front desk handed me a skeleton key on a ribbon and said, "Room 3, street view and breakfast on the terrace." I felt like royalty. My room had big windows and lace curtains, with a balcony that overlooked a little cafe below. I stood there for a long while, watching locals sip espresso and argue gently in Portuguese, gesturing like the world was still something they could shape with their hand. Then I set my bag down, kicked off my shoes, and stretched my arms wide. I was here, not watching someone's pets, not babysitting, not cleaning up after a vacation I wasn't invited to. Here, I spent the next 3 days doing everything they assumed I could. I rode a tram through the hills, gripping the yellow pole like a dare. I haggled in a street market for a hand-woven shawl, speaking in a mix of English, gestures, and laughter. I drank red wine on a rooftop bar with a view of the Tagus River and ate custard tarts so sweet they made me tear up. I met a woman named Karina, 58, divorced, from New Jersey, who was traveling solo too. We met while admiring a display of local ceramics, both reaching for the same blue bowl. She laughed. "You've got good taste," I said. "So do you want to split a bottle of wine and argue about which one of us gets the bowl?" That night, we talked for hours about kids, grandkids, marriages that drained us, and the years we wasted being quiet. She told me, "I thought once I turned 60 I'd stop mattering to the world." I nodded. They want us to believe that, don't they? That if we're not young or useful, we're nothing but background noise. That one made me pause. Because Casey wasn't cruel, she was just young. And she repeated what she saw in the people around her. Still, I didn't call. Not yet. I had more cities to see. More parts of myself to reclaim. Besides, they didn't ask where I was. They just asked why I left. That's the difference. They didn't care what I dreamed of, only what I disrupted. In Athens, I climbed the Acropolis with aching knees and a pounding heart. And at the top, surrounded by crumbling marble and blistering wind, I took a photo, just me, standing strong, arms outstretched like I was embracing the whole sky. I uploaded it, posted it with the caption, "Too old to travel? I guess I'll have to climb a few more monuments to find out." The likes started rolling in. The comments too. Strangers from all over the world saying, "You're my hero." Goals: "I want to be you at 75. And right there on a rocky outcrop in Greece, I realized something. They left me behind because they couldn't imagine me ahead. That was their mistake, not mine. There's something dangerous about joy. Not the kind that passes quickly. Like a funny commercial or a bite of cake. I mean true joy. The kind that seeps into your bones and dares you to remember who you used to be. It changes you. And by the time I landed in Dubrovnik, Croatia, 5 weeks into the trip I was never invited on, I was no longer the woman who'd waved goodbye from the porch while holding a watering can. I was no longer Grandma Ruth, who stayed behind because her knees couldn't handle stairs. I was Ruth Shepherd, woman of the world, and the world, it had noticed. It started small. That Acropolis photo I posted, the one with my arms stretched wide, wind in my scarf, went viral. I didn't even know what going viral meant until Karina texted me a link to a travel blog. This 75-year-old just schooled the internet on how to live. The title made me laugh so hard I dropped my gelato. The article shared my photo and quoted my caption. From there, it snowballed. Instagram accounts reposted it. Women messaged me. Even a podcast host emailed asking for an interview. I ignored most of it at first. I didn't do this for attention. I did it for me. But then a message came from a woman named Stephanie, 62, from Vermont. She wrote, "I was packing up my passport to throw it away. My husband passed. My kids barely talk to me. I thought my life was over. Then I saw you standing on that rock." Karina leaned in. "But I think this is the part where we turn up the volume." I grinned, loud and proud. We made plans to meet in Barcelona in a week. She had a flexible schedule. I had a full passport, and nothing to lose. And so I did something my family never expected. I extended my trip. I emailed Beverly and asked her to reroute me through Spain, then Italy, then Greece. Each leg of the journey brought more color, more texture, more of me back to the surface. In Seville, I danced in a courtyard during a flamenco performance. In Florence, I sketched the skyline from a stone bench, while pigeons flapped around me like they were applauding. In Santorini, I sat by the edge of a cliff at sunset and whispered Warren's name to the wind, thanking him for the trust and the chance to live again. Everywhere I went, I sent a postcard to myself, not to Andrew, not to Lisa, not even to Casey, just me. Each one said something different. Today I climbed a hill and didn't cry once. This morning I laughed so hard I choked on coffee. They said I was too old. I say they've got bad taste. I kept them in a stack inside my journal, and each time I added one, I felt lighter. Meanwhile, back home, silence, no texts, no calls. Until week 3, I was in a cafe in Rome, sipping espresso and wearing a scarf I'd bargained for in Venice, when my phone buzzed. A voicemail from Andrew. I didn't answer. I listened to it while biting into a biscotti. Hey mom, we're home. We thought you'd still be at the house. But, well, I guess we didn't realize you'd gone anywhere. Anyway, can you call us? Lisa's worried. We can't find your cell at the house. And we didn't know if you were okay. I smirked. 2 more messages followed over the next 2 days. One from Lisa. Ruth, this isn't funny. We came home to dying plants and piles of mail. You didn't even leave a note. Oh, but I did. They just didn't see it. Message 3 was from Casey. Grandma, are you mad at us? I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. I was just joking when I said that stuff. Please text me. I miss you. And I thought, maybe it's not. Thank you, Ruth. You gave me a reason to keep dreaming. I stared at her words for a long time. Then I hit reply. That was the start. Over the next 2 weeks, I answered every message, not with advice, but with honesty. I told them about the room behind the ferns at the wedding, the forgotten birthday cards, the backhanded comments about my knees and my memory. And then I told them about the feeling of walking through Rome with a scarf fluttering like a flag. Suddenly, women were asking me how I booked solo trips, how I handled fear, how I kept from getting lost. I told them the truth. I did get lost. I just kept walking anyway. By the time I reached Prague, I had over 30,000 followers on an account I hadn't even meant to create. Karina helped me set it up. She said, "The world needs your story, Ruth. We all need a little fire." So I named the account Ruthless Travels. We laughed for 20 minutes straight, and the world lit up. Back home, the silence from my family finally cracked. Casey texted me, "Grandma, are you in Croatia? Why are you all over Instagram? People at my college are reposting you. My friends are obsessed with you." I smiled. "Tell them your grandma's just getting started," I replied. Then Andrew called. I didn't answer. He left a message anyway. "Mom, we saw your picture. That's great, but you didn't need to disappear like this to prove a point. You scared us. The neighbors were asking if you were okay. We thought maybe something happened. Can we talk?" I pressed delete because he still didn't get it. I hadn't disappeared. I'd finally appeared, just not where he thought I belonged. Lisa called next. Her voicemail was shorter, colder. This whole public thing, the posts, the travel photos, the quotes. It's a bit much, Ruth. I think you're sending the wrong message to people. You're not 20. People need to act their age. I nearly dropped my phone, because there it was. Clear as day, act your age. How many times had that phrase been used like a leash, like a limit? What she meant was sit down, stay quiet, be useful, not visible. But I had just stood in a plaza in Prague, arms linked with 2 women in their 60s and a girl in her 20s who asked if I had TikTok. No one told me to sit. No one called me a burden. They just saw me. After Prague, I went to Amsterdam, then to a little town in southern France, where I stayed in a lavender farmhouse and learned how to bake bread with a woman named Eloise. She didn't speak English. I didn't speak French, but we laughed like sisters. In my journal, I wrote, "I am not what they left behind. I am what they never expected to find again." And still, the messages poured in. One from a mother of 3 in Kansas. "I saw your photo and booked a day trip by myself for the first time in 50. One from a woman in her 80s in Oregon. "I just ordered my first passport. I'm going to Scotland. You reminded me it's not too late." And then, the kicker, a message from a publisher, a woman named Dana. head of a mid-sized publishing house in New York. Ruth, have you ever considered writing your story? I think the world is hungry for it. And not just the world. I think your family might need it too. At first I hesitated. I didn't want to write a revenge book or a pity memoir. But then I remembered how good it felt to say what I'd never been allowed to say before. So I sat down and I wrote one chapter a day, each story like a stone out of my pocket, lighter, braver, and through it all, I traveled. I wrote chapters in coffee shops in Berlin, in hotel lobbies in Istanbul, on the deck of a ferry to Dubrovnik with gulls shrieking overhead, and each page said one thing in 100 ways. You are not too late. You are not too old. You are not invisible. By the time I reached the Amalfi Coast, my book had a title, Don't Wait for the Invitation. Karina cried when I told her. It's perfect, she said. It's what we've all been waiting to hear, and maybe, just maybe, even Andrew needed to hear it. You ever hear your name come out of someone's mouth when they think you're not listening? That's how I felt walking past a bookstore in London, watching two women in their 20s, pointing at a paperback cover in the window. That's her, one of them whispered. Ruth Shepard. I follow her on Instagram. Her book just came out. Her friend leaned in. That's the one whose family left her behind, right? And then she just disappeared and became like a legend? They laughed. Not mocking, more like wonder. Like they couldn't believe someone like me could do something like that. I stepped closer to the window. There it was. Don't wait for the invitation. In soft matte print, my name etched in gold under the title. My photo was on the back. Me on the Amalfi Coast. Wind in my scarf, holding a journal, and smiling like I'd just tasted freedom for the first time. And I had. I pushed open the door, just to see it in person. The clerk behind the counter looked up and froze. She blinked. Wait, I nodded. Her eyes widened like I'd just floated in on a cloud. We sold out of the first shipment in 2 days. I just wanted to see it on the shelf, I said quietly. Well, now we need a signing table, she said. Give me 10 minutes, I laughed. Let me at least buy a tea first. That bookstore posted a photo of me holding the book, with the caption, The real Ruth Shepard stopped by today. Yes, that Ruth Shepard. By the end of the day I was trending again. It wasn't fame I wanted. It was witness, proof that I existed, that I mattered, that I was more than a woman in the background of a family photo or the caretaker of someone else's joy. And oh, they saw me now. A week after that London visit, I got an email from Dana, my publisher. Ruth, the book's taking off faster than we expected. We're getting requests from talk shows, podcasts, radio interviews. Everyone wants to talk to the woman who said no more at 75 and meant it. Let me know if you want to do a US press tour. We'll set it all up. I said yes. Not because I needed the attention, but because I earned it. So I flew home, first class. Thank you very much. I wore a navy blue blazer and a silk blouse and sipped sparkling water while a flight attendant asked if I needed anything else. No, sweetheart, I said. I've already got everything. Landing back in the US was surreal. The news segments started airing within days. Grandma gone global, the woman who said no to being left behind. Viral widow turns pain into power in new memoir. Ruthless travels meet the 75-year-old who's more booked than a pop star. Each segment included footage from my Instagram. Me dancing in Greece, laughing in Lisbon, standing on a rainstorm in Prague with my arms wide open. And then came the email from Casey. Grandma, everyone's talking about you. I'm sorry. I didn't know you felt like that. I was so wrapped up in my own world, I didn't even see you. That one made me pause. Then Andrew emailed. His subject line, can we talk? I didn't open it right away. Instead, I took a walk around the lake near my hotel. The trees were turning gold, the air crisp, and I let the silence settle over me. Could we talk? Maybe, but not if he was going to talk at me. I wasn't a prop anymore. I wasn't background support. I was a woman with a voice, one the world had listened to before he ever did. Later that evening, I checked the news. There was a clip from a morning show I hadn't watched yet. Apparently, one of the producers had gotten hold of Andrew. He was sitting on their couch, trying his best to sound reflective. "I guess I just didn't realize how much I'd taken my mom for granted," he said. "You get busy with life, kids, jobs, and you forget that your parents are people, not just support systems." The host nodded. "Do you think this experience has changed how you see her?" He swallowed. "Completely." He didn't say much more, but that was enough. Not for forgiveness, but for recognition. A few days later, I finally replied to Casey. "Sweetheart, I know you didn't mean to hurt me, but sometimes the things we repeat, even as jokes, become the bars in someone else's cage. You were just following what you saw. I'm glad you see more now, and I love you. I always will," she replied with a photo, her holding my book in her college dorm room. Reading this made me cry. "I want to do better. I want to be more like you." That one made me cry too. And then the letter came. A proper one. Mailed. Stamped. From Andrew. Inside was a simple card. "Mom, I treated you like a coat hook. Something to hang responsibility on and forget about." We'd laugh, cry, sip tea, and work through my story piece by piece. I didn't want it to be a lecture. I wanted it to feel like a letter. A letter to the woman I used to be. To the woman I met in Lisbon, who thought she was too old for second chances. To the daughter who finally said sorry. To the granddaughter who opened her eyes. The day of the event, I stood backstage in a navy pantsuit and pearl earrings. My knees were trembling, but my heart was steady. Dana was there. So was Karina. She flew in just to surprise me. When I saw her in the front row, I nearly burst into tears. And in the third row, to my absolute shock, was Casey. My granddaughter. She wore a simple black blazer and sat clutching a notebook in her lap, her eyes wide and full of something I hadn't seen in a long time. Respect. I walked out onto the red dot and took a deep breath, and then I spoke. I used to think my voice was a gift I gave away in pieces. To my husband, my children, my bosses, the church, the PTA, and when there were no pieces left for me, I told myself that was just how things were. That quiet was dignity. That shrinking was grace. But then one day, my family packed their suitcases and told me, "You're too old to travel with us, Grandma. Just stay and watch the house." And I realized I had become invisible in the very story I helped write. So I packed my bag. I got on a plane. I went looking for all the parts of me I'd set aside, and I found her, dancing in Spain, drawing in Italy, learning how to say freedom in 6 different languages. I was never too old. They were just too early to understand. The room was silent when I finished. Then it wasn't. The applause hit like a wave, not just polite clapping, but standing, cheering, tearful applause that made me realize I hadn't just said something for them. I'd said something they'd been aching to say themselves. Afterward, Casey rushed up to the stage and hugged me so hard I thought my spine might snap. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I didn't know how much I needed to hear that." I held her close. "You were young," I said, "and now you're growing." She looked at me through teary eyes. "Will you help me grow better?" It was the first time in my life that someone in my family asked for my guidance, not out of obligation, but from genuine want. We sat together for hours that evening. She asked questions, took notes, showed me a list of ideas for a travel blog she wanted to start, aimed at younger women who were caring for older women, but didn't know how to do it with respect. "Like a reverse Ruthless Travels," she said with a shy smile. And I said, "Only if I get guest posts." We laughed. A few weeks later, I received a letter in the mail, handwritten, on soft pink paper. It was from Lisa. "Dear Ruth, I read your book. I never asked what you wanted. I never imagined you had a story that didn't include me. But now the whole world knows it. And I finally do too. I'm sorry. I'm proud of you. Andrew, I held that letter in my hands for a long time. Not because it fixed everything, but because it proved something I'd always hoped. Sometimes they do see you again, eventually. That week, I did something I hadn't done in over 20 years. I bought a house, not for them, for me, a tiny blue cottage in Oregon, right near the coast. Sunlight pours through every window, and the porch looks out over a rocky cliff where the waves slam hard and loud and alive. I planted lavender along the walkway, hung wind chime, and I filled it with everything I brought home from my travels: photos, sketches, a scarf from Rome, a blue bowl from Lisbon, and a whole stack of postcards I mailed to myself. And one day, when the world stops asking questions, when the cameras go quiet, when it's just me again, I'll sit on that porch, sip my tea, and smile knowing I wasn't too old. They were just too small. The funny thing about finding your voice is, once you've used it, once you've really used it, you start seeing all the ways you stayed silent for far too long. I wasn't just silent at the wedding, or when they laughed at my dress. I was silent for decades, letting people decide for me, letting them tell me what I was good for, what I was too old to do, when really, I had been waiting for someone to ask me what I wanted. Now they were asking. But the most surprising part, it wasn't just my family or the women online reaching out. It was people with platform. Dana called me again one morning, as I was watering the lavender outside my new Oregon cottage. "Ruth," she said breathlessly, "you've got another invitation. And I think you're going to want to take this one." I chuckled. "Unless it's to tea with Eleanor Roosevelt's ghost. I think I've had enough invites for one lifetime." Dana laughed. "Close. It's TED. They want you to speak at the Women and Aging Conference in Boston this spring." I stood there, hose dripping on my sandal, blinking into the sunlight. TED, as in the red dot on the stage, the headset microphone, the very one. My first instinct was to say no. I'm not a speaker. I'm not flashy. I barely know how to work half the apps on my phone. But then I remembered what this whole journey was about, not wait. And besides, if I could stand at the top of the Acropolis in sandals and a sun hat, I could stand on a stage in front of a room full of women. I said yes, and then I got to work. Karina helped me draft my talk. We met once a week over video calls. Her still traveling, me settling into my new life. Twice. The first time, I was defensive, angry even. I thought, how dare she tell our story? But then I read it again. And I realized it wasn't our story. It was yours. And I never asked to hear it. I see you now. Thank you for not waiting for permission. You've changed me more than you know. Love, Lisa. I cried when I read it. Not because it fixed everything, but because it proved something. That sometimes the ripples you send out when you finally speak your truth reach shores you thought were too far gone. That spring, I hosted my first retreat for women over 60 who wanted to travel solo, but didn't know where to start. We rented a villa in Tuscany. We had a chef, morning yoga, evening wine, journaling under olive trees. Most importantly, we had each other. Women shared their fears, their story, their plans. They left with confidence, sunburns, and a group chat that buzzed for months afterward. I called it the Ruthless Reboot. We sold out the next 4 retreats before the first one even ended. And as I stood in the vineyard that last night, watching those women dance barefoot in the grass to an old Billie Holiday song, I realized something simple and beautiful. They tried to leave me behind, and I built a path ahead of them instead. It started with a knock on the door. I was back at my little blue cottage in Oregon, settling in after the second Ruthless Reboot retreat in Argentina, the one where Marlene, 81, hiked a full 2 miles uphill in a Patagonia windstorm. Just to prove to herself she still could. I was still unpacking when I heard it, that soft, uncertain knock that doesn't belong to delivery drivers or neighbors. It sounded like someone who wasn't sure they should be there. I opened the door. And there he was, Andrew, my son, standing on my porch, shoulders slumped, holding a bag of groceries and a pie in a bakery box. "Hi, Mom," he said. "I didn't know if you'd be home." I crossed my arms but kept my tone calm. "Where else would I be?" he chuckled nervously. "Honestly, Bali. Or Iceland. Or walking across a glacier in your orthopedic sandals." I didn't smile. "Not yet." He held out the bag like it was a peace offering. "I brought chicken soup and lemon pie. Your favorite." I stepped aside. I smiled but kept sketching. I've learned not to flinch when people notice. I don't shrink from it anymore. I earned it. The sketch is for a new mural being painted by a group of women from the Ruthless Reboot community. It'll go up in a Boston transit station. A collage of women over 60 from around the world, doing things no one thought they could. Skydiving, writing, farming, surfing, smiling, living. And right in the center will be the same quote I scratched into my journal the night they told me I was too old. "The journey doesn't end until you say it does." It's not about revenge anymore, not really. Don't get me wrong. I meant every mile, every post, every press interview. I built something with the hurt they handed me, turned their dismissal into power. But these days what drives me isn't proving them wrong. It's proving me right. The woman I was, scared, overlooked, waiting for permission, she still lives in me. But now she's not trapped. And she's loud. I check my phone. A message from Dana pops up. "We've hit 2 million copies sold. You ready to write the next one?" Then another from Andrew. "Don't forget Casey's graduation party. We're starting early, she wants you to speak." And a third from a woman named Imani, who just got accepted to our Porch Project grant. "Ruth, I'm crying. I haven't had anyone believe in me like this since my husband passed. Thank you." I close my eyes and breathe in the air. This is the life they told me I was too old for. Let me tell you how it really ended. The day of Casey's graduation party, arrived at Andrew's house. Yes, the same house I once sat alone in while they flew across the world without me. It looked the same from the outside, but inside, everything was different. Casey greeted me first, wearing a green dress, and holding a copy of Don't Wait for the Invitation in one hand, and her diploma in the other. "I couldn't have done this without you," she whispered. Then Lisa. She gave me a real hug this time. No awkward side tap. No "be careful" warnings. Just warmth. Even Virginia, Eric's mother, came over with a polite nod and a copy of my book, clutched like it was sacred. Andrew, bless his heart, cooked all the food himself. Lemon chicken, roasted potato, even my favorite lemon pie, the one I hadn't had since the day he showed up on my porch. When it was time for toasts, Casey handed me the mic. "Just say a few words, Grandma," she said. "From you, it'll mean everything." I took a breath and looked out at the crowd. My family, friends, strangers who had become sisters in spirit. I thought of Florence, of Lisbon, of Buenos. I thought of all the women who sat in basements, or rocked on porches, or stared at the same 4 walls and wondered, is this all I get? So I said this. "You coming in? Or are we doing this dance on the porch?" Inside, the house smelled like lavender and salt air. I'd been growing herbs on the kitchen windowsill, and a few prints from local artists hung on the walls. gifts from women who'd been on my retreats. He looked around like it was the first time he'd seen me. "Nice place," he said. "It's mine," I replied. "Bought it myself." He nodded slowly, placing the pie on the table. "I know." We sat down. He poured 2 glasses of water. For a moment we just sat. 2 people who had once shared everything, and now didn't quite know how to hold even a glass between them. "I read the book," he finally said. I waited. "I didn't like it at first. I didn't write it for you." "I know," he said. "That's why I had to read it twice." I raised an eyebrow. "And I was wrong about everything." He stared down at the table. "Ashamed. I thought I was protecting you. I told myself you didn't want to travel, that you were tired or fragile. But I think deep down, I knew you were just waiting, and I didn't want to ask why." I let him sit with that. Sometimes silence is the only teacher we respect. "I'm sorry," he said again, more quietly. "I thought I knew best, but I didn't even know you." I studied him. He looked older, not just in the crow's feet around his eyes, but in the way he carried his regrets. Like a coat he finally realized didn't belong to him, but to me. "You didn't ask what I needed," I said. "You assumed what I didn't." He nodded. I picked up the fork and took a bite of the pie. It was lemon, tart, perfect. "I'm not angry anymore," I said. He looked up. "But I'm not going to sit in a rocking chair and wait for invitations. I don't need permission to matter." "I know," he whispered. "You taught the whole world that." We talked for hours about Casey, who had started writing for women's magazines and now hosted a podcast called The Grandmother Effect, where she interviewed women over 60 who'd reinvented themselves. About Lisa, who had apologized in person and now volunteered at a local senior center. "I think we all grew up after you left," he said. "No," I corrected him. "You grew up because I finally left." He didn't argue. That weekend, I brought him with me to a Ruthless Reboot planning session in Seattle. He helped move chairs and passed out pamphlets. I watched him sit in the back and listen as 3 women in their 70s talked about opening a bookstore together. On the drive home, he said, "This isn't just a retreat, it's a movement." I smiled. "It's a revolution in sensible shoes." We both laughed. By the end of that month, we started something together. The Porch Project, inspired by my book's final chapter. It was a nationwide grant program for women over 60 who wanted to start a passion project, a blog, a bakery, a mobile sewing studio, a community garden. No strings, no paperwork jungle. Just faith in women who still had stories to write. Dana helped us secure a publisher to turn Don't Wait for the Invitation into a series featuring stories from women all over the world who, like me, finally said yes to themselves. At the launch party in New York, I wore a plum silk blouse and stood on stage as 30 women from 10 countries raised glasses in my honor. Karina gave the toast. "To Ruth," she said, "who turned a no into the biggest yes any of us ever needed." The crowd clapped, and then, to my surprise, Andrew stood. "To my mother," he said, "who taught me what freedom really looks like, and that age is only a ceiling if you're too afraid to break it." I stood quietly, hands at my sides, eyes wet but clear. Later that night, Casey pulled me aside. "You know," she said, "when I first saw your Instagram, I thought it was all kind of funny. Like, haha, grandma's gone wild. But then I realized," she swallowed hard, "it wasn't funny at all. It was brave. It was true. I don't want to wait until I'm 75 to do what you did. I want to do it now." I hugged her. And for once, she didn't feel like a child. She felt like a woman walking beside me. We spent the rest of the night dancing barefoot on the rooftop. The skyline lit up behind us, the music loud, the laughter louder. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something settle in my chest. Not grief, not anger, but peace. It's been 3 years since they left me behind. 3 years since I stood in that quiet, empty house, watching my family drive off to Italy with their shiny luggage and rehearsed smiles, waving like they were doing me a favor. Back then, I was too stunned to speak. Now people pay to hear me talk. Funny how things turn around. I'm sitting on a stone bench in Florence. Yes, Florence, with a sketch pad on my lap and a cappuccino cooling beside me. The air smells like roasted chestnuts and sun-warmed pavement. Bells are ringing somewhere behind me. My hair's longer now, pulled back into a clip. I let it grow. A small group of tourists just passed by, and one of them whispered, "That's her, Ruth Shepherd." There was a time when I let the world decide when my story was over. When I stayed quiet so others could feel comfortable. When I shrank so they could stretch. And then one day, I got left behind. And instead of waiting for someone to come back for me, I left them. I went forward, alone, at first. But not for long, because what I learned is, when you step outside the box they built for you, when you refuse to let age or grief or loneliness define you, others follow. We weren't meant to fade. We were meant to ignite. So don't wait, not for the invitation, not for the permission, not for someone to say, "It's your turn, take your turn now." I did. And look what happened. People clapped, some stood, others wiped their eyes. But the one who mattered most, Casey, she came up and threw her arms around me. "You're not just my grandmother," she said. "You're the reason I believe I can do anything." And just like that, the hurt of 3 years ago, the forgotten trip, the words that stung, it didn't vanish, but it transformed. From pain to purpose, from silence to story, from exile to empire. That night, I sat by the fire pit, while Andrew brought out tea and Lisa sat beside me, watching the flames. "Do you miss the old life?" Lisa asked. "No," I said. "Not even a little?" I turned to her, the fire reflecting in both our eyes. "Lisa," I said gently, "I wasn't living before, I was serving. There's a difference." She nodded slowly, and I knew she understood, because now, she was living too. I'll end this story the way I end all my retreats, with a small quiet truth. You're never too old. They may say you are, they may even believe it, but it's not their job to define you. It's yours and mine. I finally know who I am. Not a forgotten grandmother, not a burden, not a placeholder, but a woman who got left behind and then bought the ticket. No one offered her.